Hi, everyone. We've got here Mark Brown, CIO of Dyson Group, uh, right from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thanks, Ali.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm huge passionate about innovation agility, right? This whole paradigm of no code and what that means for enterprise innovation. So I mean, you've been in the trenches. You've been at multiple large companies in the role of a CIO, and you've seen that whole crisis of innovation, right? Of so much that gets thrown at you as a CIO. Uh, how do you see that this whole chaos of so much innovation coming in, and you have to make sense of all?
Yeah, it's interesting, a career that spanned quite a number of years. Starting off in the development space where it used to be the standard way is that there'd be a business problem and then they would have someone put together some sort of requirement and throw it at a software company and say, well, we don't quite know what we want, just have a go and sort of build it. And having done that for quite a number of years in development and then moving through to sort of architecture and then into CIO roles over the years, I've seen a major transformation in just how businesses approach the use of technology. My specialist area or the domain is around international transport or public transport, logistics, supply chain. It's an area where you think about all the paper and pens that's been used over the years compared to how it is now, where there are, I suppose, people wearing goggles around warehouses looking at different products, and it picks up barcode scanning and seeing what's there. So that it's been a major transformation in a relatively short period of time. So yeah, I suppose the chaos of being a CIO in that space is every industry I tend to go into, you feel as though how did they operate before we got here? Because there's a lot of manual pieces of paper, the amount of paper that's still being printed, manual process. It's just quite amazing to think how businesses make money when the cost of labour is getting so high, but yet everything is so manual and paper everywhere. It can be quite a challenge sometimes to find efficiencies in a business that's all paper. Or once you identify with help of really good process applications, great development tools, it's still the business change, which is probably the hardest that I find. Getting to know the business, what they actually do, shadowing the operations is probably a part that, if it isn't done well, can really, it doesn't help the business as much as what it could.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I still remember a few months back when you joined Dyson, the first thing you said, my biggest priority is to be in the driver's shoe and run around the whole operations and kind of internalize of what those real business pain points are, right? And to your point, unless you understand business in a real intricate way, with all its nuances, all the different things that happen day to day, you can't really innovate, right? It's just going to become a silo where you kind of running more like a science experiment, and when rubber hits the road, you realize that a lot of what you were thinking is not what's going to create the business outcomes. To that point, how important you think it is for that collaboration between the business and IT to work in a way where they are co-innovating, as opposed to uh, business giving requirements and you writing functional specs and going into development. I like to call them death cycles. We used to call
Yeah.
them software life development life cycles. How important do you think that co-innovation really has to be in place?
Yeah, I think something that I've learned over the years is, and a model that I really like is the lean agile model. The trouble is, if you say the words of agile or lean agile or something like that into a transport business, they go, no, we're not doing that. And so what you need to do is I implement it with the use of user stories, acceptance criteria, and the concept of epics, but I don't call them those terms. And you don't have stand-ups because that tends to scare transport people as well. So what you do is you engage in a way where you actually get them to answer the questions or to give you their requirements in a user story type way. One thing about people in transport and logistics, if you give them a process, they'll follow it. So the process of saying that sort of user story. As a bus driver, I want to, I would like a system to put in my leave request so I can put my leave in when I'm actually out in the field. You get them to put those questions together or their requirements together, and before you know it, you very quickly have a solution. But like I sort of said earlier, getting in there, shadowing the operations. My first question I come in, Dyson's is my fourth transformation as a CIO. Um, I ask who are my customers, and then the CEO says me, and then the CFO says me, and then the finance team says me, and I said, no, 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 where are all of our users that actually use the systems? So introducing like a concept of personas and understand where the biggest user base is the approach that I've taken. Dyson Group was no different to the last place I did a transformation at was Costa Group, where about 80 to 85% of the users don't use technology every day, but they could benefit from using technology. So the drivers fill out lots and lots of pieces of paper. They'll log into about 3 different systems in buses, depending on what route they're on. But none of the systems speak to each other. They still have manual pieces of paper. They'll hand it to one person who keys it into one system, who then writes a report and then takes it out and puts it into another system. And you think, guys, this is just madness. But you don't know that if you're just sitting in the boardroom. You actually have to get behind and follow the people, walk in their shoes, as you said before, shadow them, and truly understand what they do. And it was interesting. I've done that exercise with Dyson's in the first sort of 3 months, and I highlighted from just a data flow perspective, what are the top 10 things we could digitize to take out probably about 30 to 40% of the admin that a bus driver does, and the amount of effort to do it is actually quite low. And it's amazing when you present that back to the business, say, okay, here are the first 10 apps we're going to build. And they go, oh, wow, that's been problems for years. And we said, yeah, we realize that because we've walked around and we've followed the drivers. So
That's so true, right? So like walking with the business, like, getting into the issue and understanding it from their viewpoint is critical. What really happens for most of the part is IT is usually bogged down in all the legacy, and they are doing that in a constant maintenance cycle of the technical debt that has been accumulated over years and decades. There's little time that gets left for innovation, right? So now, how do you see that as the big issue that comes in the way of real true innovation?
yeah, I think from my perspective, I only go into a business that's looking to change. So brought in as doing a transformation of some sort, normally to digitize the business and help them get into modern times. A business that's ready to change is always open to it. So it's quite easy to come into a business that's looking for change and want to make, I suppose, become a differentiator from their competitors. But looking to innovate is it's almost like what every business unit needs to do. It's not just an IT function getting bogged down in legacy systems. So I suppose when I come in to a business that's looking to change, creating the architecture, working with the team to look at go through that standard people, process, technology area where you look at our user base, look at all the processes and you go, okay, well, we can probably eliminate about 20% of those processes by having some good technology, and then you look at the tools. I suppose my approach when I do transformations is look at all of the core systems, focus on the systems that probably do 80% of the work, not get focused on all the little rats and mice out there, and then find a way of bringing all the data into one central spot. Because most of the businesses you go into will have a major ERP, there'll be a JD Edwards, there'll be an SAP, and we all know that they're great systems and really good cores, but they don't do user interface or user interaction too well. So what do you do? How do you create a layer? How do you make it easier for people to interact? And I suppose, Ali, that's where I first met you with your solution, with your application. So yeah, we created a data warehouse, created that data layer which brings data together from all the various systems, And the best way to innovate is to have, from my approach, is to have all the data in one spot, and then you can create a layer over the top. Integration is critical, is key in this. So whenever I move into a business, I look at the people part, understand the skill sets and the capability, and say, okay, who's the data expert, who's the integration expert, and who's the application expert. And if you don't have one in each of those areas, then that's what you need to sort of get first. I've been fortunate through my career. I've had someone come along with each of my transformations, and it makes the process much different because we've done it together before. And that's been no different with Dyson's as well.
No, absolutely. I think I still remember we had already sold an initial proof of concept to Dyson's when I was told by the team that there's a new CIO now. You know how that goes. When a new CIO comes in, the sales cycle pretty much starts from rock bottom, right? Sometimes even lower, because then you have to do the whole thing. I was a little worried about that first call where we're going to be showing this whole paradigm shift on no code. I was like, a new CIO doesn't always mean that the CIO would come up with that mindset, right? Of understanding what we're talking about. And I still remember that first call, like we just clicked. Like within 5 minutes, you had grabbed what we're talking about. You could even start thinking about an architecture behind it. And you also mentioned about something that you wanted to do, and you could see it in front of your eyes, and you were very excited about that whole idea of enterprise no code automation, right? Like you said, once you have the data in place, once you have integration in place, then it just becomes so much more fun, right? In terms of innovating, utilizing no code. Talk me a little bit about that whole sort of experience and journey you've had.
I was looking at that first meeting. You're right. I was sort of saying, because it was yourselves and another company that was doing a proof of concept, and I'm probably like someone like you, either your best friend or your worst nightmare coming in, because when I come in, I understand how most of these applications have been built just through experience over the years. And I sat with the first company and went through it, and I said, okay, so how do I get access to the code? Can I do custom objects? And they said, no, it's effectively a black box. And I said, oh, that's not looking good. And then I came and we sat down and I asked the same questions, and you said, yeah, you can do this and you can do that. And I thought, oh, okay. And as we went deeper into the conversation, I actually thought, hang on, I built this about 4 years ago myself in a past business to overcome the same sort of problems you're overcoming. And I looked at it, and every question that I asked, it's almost like you had lived my life in the past and you'd created a solution which is exactly what I'd built. The fact now is I didn't have to bring a development team in to do it. I just basically can plug in a BA or two, get a bit of integration, and it's exactly what I was looking for. So I suppose it may be a tough sell for you, for people who don't truly understand the technology and how best to use it, if they're more of an administrator and a manager rather than what I'd call a technologist. But yeah, I agree, that's where we sort of clicked, because we've both got that sort of benefit everybody technologist sort of outlook.
No, absolutely. And I think to your point, like where once you gather all the data in a more sort of standardized way, I'm a big believer that your system of record cannot be your system of innovation. The system of record has to be your system of record. Your system of integration, the system of intelligence, they can come into the mix. But the real deal is that system of engagement, right? That experience layer that you just alluded to. That most of these ERPs that you guys use JD Edwards for a while, and it is a great system. It's a great sort of engine to do the business logic, to have that sort of data structure for the business, and tons of stuff that it does well. But it's not a system of engagement. You can't engage with your end users, with your customers, with your drivers, even with your suppliers using the ERP itself. But then the other thing that I'm big on is the fact that instead of reinventing the wheel, instead of creating another silo where you're going to write the business logic, tons of which is already there inside of your ERP, if you can somehow inherit that business logic inside of a no-code automation platform, like with something that can work off of a metadata, right? Yep. Because then what you're opening up is a lot of different possibilities for even the business analysts, because I strongly feel the business analysts understand metadata better than the developer would, because the metadata represents the business, right? Yeah. And they're closer to the business users, they speak the same language. So if you can empower them, one, to be able to inherit all the legacy that's there, either in the ERP or some other proprietary systems, and then give them a playground where they can imagine the new experiences and actually build those experiences without having to go through that software development death cycle.
Yeah.
That just creates that magic. What would you say about that?
And I suppose 100% agree. The approach I use is like using wireframe tools. And one of the wireframe tools I use is called Balsamic. Use it for many, many years, and I find most people are visual. They like to, if they can see it, they feel like they can touch it, you'll actually progress much faster. Now, it's very difficult to do that with the ERPs, and I agree that the engine is so key. And when you say engine, I have the analogy of a bus coming straight in, right? Like if the engine's sitting under the floor, with all the storage and everything like that, you don't throw your passengers under there. You want to put them in somewhere, some nice cozy chairs. So how do we make nice cozy chairs in JD Edwards, for instance? Your user experience, you may have to jump through 3 or 4 areas in order to actually complete a task. So when it's really one task, why would we want to make a user do it? So to me, bring it all in one screen, make it easy. I when you're just saying about the data and the metadata, the other thing that comes to mind is how many times have we all heard, oh, this report's broken? And you say, oh, why is the report broken? Oh, because it doesn't match the report that I used yesterday. We'll say, okay, so where did that report come from? Oh, that's because John over here, he extracted the data out of JD Edwards and then he assigned some extra data, some extra logic into his report, into his spreadsheet. And then Jane goes, no, that report's not the right report. Here's a report that I use. And she's put her own logic in. And before you know it, the actual core data itself is gone. So that same concept of a data warehouse where if you're going to apply business rules and business logic, if you can't do it in the ERP and you need to do some level of customization, do it in one spot that people can't get their hands on. So then when they're running the reports all match. All the data is the same because we're not manipulating that core data. And I looked at that as the same way for the user experiences. As long as the data is the same, it's the same core application that we're working with. That user experience can be customized, but there's nothing custom in the actual data layer. It's all about the user experience. So if I'm doing an end of day inspection of my bus and I walk around the bus, instead of going around with a piece of paper, then I actually have a post-trip inspection little app. And on that app, to prove that somebody has walked around the bus instead of they're sitting in the driver's seat just saying, yeah, tick, 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 everything's okay, you can use NFC or you can use QR codes. So then they actually scan the code as they're walking around the bus. That proves where they are. You have the ability of taking a photo as you go. And through that, this pre-trip inspection that we've actually created through the Swift platform gives you the ability of automatically creating a defect in JDE, taking a vehicle off-road in Tim's, our bus management solution. So all done from one app. I can actually manipulate multiple systems. I am capturing photos. If there's any insurance claim that's required, if there's any question around whose fault it is, where the damage is, you're actually doing it on the spot from the vehicle, from an app, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with JDE or our bus management system while they're out in the field. They're only doing it on the app. Now, it'll store the data, it'll send it live. That's the sort of capability that you have by the innovation of no-code apps or where we have centralized data. There's so many use cases that in the past you would write a requirement, give it to a software company, they'll go and build a whole custom application, and then when it's time to integrate, they go, oh, no, this is just the custom application. Now we have to integrate it into the systems where it's that's where I see transformation has occurred so much with low-code apps.
That's so true. Yeah, it's kind of a controversial question, right? So I've been saying this quite a bit, that software development lifecycle, the way we've known it for decades now, is kind of becoming obsolete, and it's more of a software development death cycle. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's that whole black box theory, right? You put a requirement into the black box and it comes out not necessarily how you wanted it to, and then you'll go through 3 or 4 iterations going through the the death cycle, as you call it, before you get to the solution. Now, the amount of time it takes to get there is long, and depending on who's doing the work, quite costly. And a lot of companies have made a lot of money out of this process for a long time. Those days are gone. Um, I suppose the one thing to note is, in order to leverage or start utilizing low code tools and data warehouses, you do need to have a structured approach going in. Because if you start the process without knowing where you want to get to, it will take a lot longer. Getting that right architecture up front, to leverage the data warehouses, to leverage the AI agents, to leverage all the low code apps. If you're not organized at the start, then you'll still get there, but it'll take a little bit longer. But yeah, I think the days of that, starting with a big requirement, the concept of, I don't know, MVPs, minimum viable products, I think that's something that has come in, that the business, one of my sayings wherever I go is fail fast. So I'd prefer to fail fast within 3 to 4 weeks, get it wrong, but then get it right. And that's something that sort of has followed me with the approach. And when you have other people sitting around the exec table saying, oh, Mark, how are we going to do this? And we say, well, how do you reckon? They go, oh, well, it can't take long. And then one of the other execs will say, well, Mark always says, fail fast. Let's try it, get something working and move forward. And that's where I suppose that old software development life cycle it's gone. I don't think it'll ever come back again.
And to that point, like the other thing that's interrelated, I would say, one is the technology set, right? We talked about no code and these new methodologies. The other is the mindset, right? So sort of agility though doesn't just come from tools; it also comes from how the execs think about problem solving. And the typical team structures that we've all been enslaved within, the pyramids that we've lived our lives through, right? As especially with larger organizations, obviously there has to be some method to the madness. So you have those obviously hierarchies and whatnot. But within this whole idea of innovating fast and failing fast, this analogy of a playground as opposed to a pyramid in which you operate. And I've seen you do the exact same, right? Where I've seen you roll your sleeves up, and I've seen your team collaborating and working in a way where, whoever has the best idea and execution wins, as opposed to just, the stringent approval hierarchies that we've come to know of. And it goes on to the culture, right? That takes a strong leader, to be able to establish that sort of a culture where everybody can say, I messed up or I did wrong, and I'm going to iterate it quickly and fail fast quickly and, get the next iteration better and better and better. What would be your thoughts on that? Pyramid versus playground.
Yeah, the playground to me is key, because in the playground, the best thing is that you meet kids from the other streets, and you get to play and you get to learn games that they've played that you haven't played before. So you sort of continue on with that analogy around in the development space. Most workplaces you're in are with people who have worked in so many different places. Everyone has good ideas. Sometimes they're practical, sometimes they're not. You can then sort of relate them to your industry. Using this sort of wireframing where everyone gets a bit of an idea, everyone can draw. It's effectively throwing a group of kids in the playground a pack of crayons and saying, go and draw something. And then once you've drawn it, who's got the best idea? And then we just go and actually build it. That playground, and I suppose the common response that I first get when I come into these businesses is, oh, how long is that going to take? All right. And you say, okay, well, we'll show you the first version in a week, or we'll show you in 2 weeks. And they go, no, you can't do it that quick. I've been told for the last 5 years that it's a 2-year project to do that. And I said, but why? Have you been told that? And they said, oh, it's just so hard and so complex. And literally when you show them a working version, very basic, but a working version within 1 to 2 weeks, that creates the excitement, it creates the energy, and then everybody believes they've got a great idea. And then you put them all together, and that engagement is key. I think some of the sort of the governance and engagement forums I introduce is, like, I call it an architecture review group. In the architecture review groups has a number, and we meet fortnightly. It has people from all of the functional and departments in the business. So no execs allowed other than me. But it means that all of the people who actually are making the decisions day in, day out, and are the ones who are the true end users of the technology, they get involved in a group. So when there's new ideas coming towards it, it's amazing. Someone had a suggestion around supplier risk, and they said, "Oh, we need a supplier risk solution," and that's come from the procurement person. And then when he started presenting what the application did, then the finance person said, "Oh, we can do that for our vendor onboarding." And then operations said, "Oh, yeah, well, before we go and look at a new spare parts supplier, we should be looking at that." And before you know it, a simple I need a supplier risk solution turned into a solution that half of the business now uses, which is just starting from a conversation now. If we had done that in the old pyramid, we probably would have ended up with 3 different systems doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But by bringing it into one area, that's to me the governance or the leadership part of what I do is pretty much just get everybody talking. To me, having sort of communities of excellence or collaboration is not having Teams, is not having Zoom or Google Meet. It's actually about having people discuss their current issues or listen to what other people's issues are, because you'd be surprised the advice or similar problems people have had in the past. So yeah, to me, the playground's got to have the right kids in it though, and that's sometimes a challenge.
Absolutely. I think that's so spot on. It kind of creates a different sort of energy, right? Where you feel everybody's empowered and everybody can have a shot at the goal. It just changes the way people approach problems, as opposed to a hierarchy of decisions, which are people feel constrained. It just, and then the tool set has to kind of support that mindset, right? And
That's
that's where
right.
no code shines in a big way, where if you have an idea, don't think of a bureaucratic process of how to write, write the specs and go to find a business analyst who's going to work with you to finalize the functional specs and take it to the development cycle. So that again is the technology that can support that sort of mindset is also critical, right? I think they both kind of go in hand. So a couple of more points. And I think you've already sort of alluded to that already, that why every department must own innovation. And you gave few examples of how something came up from finance and became a solution that was more cross-functional. Anything that you would like to add on that part?
Yeah, I think when I sort of come into the business and come with almost like a cookie cutter strategy and approach of doing it, obviously you adapt it to the business, but I don't know, call it the foundation or the fundamentals are exactly the same, right? Um, when you can lead a functional area like technology, and then they can see what you can do and how easy you can apply it to their area, it actually can inspire change and that motivation that they go, well, hang on a minute, he's only been here a couple of months. Look, there's a very clear strategy. They're following it, and look at the value of following a strategy. Um, and so then having either other exec members or other parts of the business actually see how easy it is to create a strategy and then to start executing it. And we all know with a strategy, you might put it on a nice big glossy piece of document that's 10 pages long, but probably about 3 months in, half of it's changed. And then another 3 months later, it's changed again. So it goes back to that mindset of it's even low code type mindset, right? You start off what you think is the right direction, and as you're going, you need to be flexible, you need to be agile and adjust. Um, yeah, I find that the inspiration that one area gives another area, that we had a overall strategy day not too long ago. Nearly everybody had in their strategy some technology improvements. When they had done this, and this is what I'd been told, when they'd done this in the past, it was more about, I just needed a report. I just needed a report, where now people are saying, oh, I need the solution to be able to do this for me. So when we're out in the field, we can actually do it on the spot. So people are starting to realize the value, but it's sometimes hard unless you get the right sponsorship's a key thing in this
Yeah. So,
area as
I mean,
well.
in some cases, businesses even stopped asking for a solution because they thought it's going to be a frustrating cycle of maybe, like you said, a year or more before they
Yeah.
can see the light of the day. So a lot of those moment of truths where those ideas and innovations that spur up in the minds of the business users, they were very hesitant to even talk about that. They would maybe have scribbled it out in some notepad, or they might want to do it. But this whole fear of what that going to look like in terms of actually developing it, probably has killed more ideas than anything else in the enterprise. So going to the next and last point here, this whole debate about agents versus apps, right? So on one extreme, we've got Microsoft thinking that agents are going to replace the apps, because SaaS applications are not just anything but more, basically not more than anything but a database with some crude operations on top, and the business logic is going to be on the agent side. On the other extreme, you find companies like Oracle who say that, okay, SaaS is going to be there for sure. This agent is going to become part of the offering within SaaS, and we're not even going to charge extra for it. Now, whichever part of that debate you are in, either it's apps or it's agents or it's both, most pragmatic and most practical thing is going to be both, and it's going to be a long transition. I'm of an opinion that if you have a no-code mindset and the business technologists, the business analysts, the business technologists, who can train the agents and build the apps with that metadata approach, is going to be the game changer, right? Yeah. Where you are empowered to be able to build either of the two and then have them coexist together. So you don't have to bet on one versus the other. And those two things I feel are those, innovation champions in this new era. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm sort of, I won't say I'm sitting on the fence, but the model is in between for me. I'm more down the path of agents will be sitting inside the apps, where you'll have a core application and it will have agents running around assisting you, helping you out, saying, did you realize this? Did you realize that? It's funny when I hear different people talk about it at conferences and think tanks and things like that. The first thing that comes to mind is the old Windows. Remember the little paperclip that used to pop up? A paperclip with eyes, and it would almost say, hi, I'm here to help you, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. How we've come a long way since those days. But that's effectively how I see it, is the agents are sitting there in the app or in the actual tool that you've developed. And this is where I think low-code's got a real path going forward, is creating these low-code tools with having agents sitting there to assist. It's got these massive volumes of data warehouse and information and historical and behavioral patterns around how people are using things, automatically filling out data capture that's required in a business, whether it be from other data sources or from them realizing the last time you did the transaction, you did it this way. Knowing that it's the end of month in a financial transaction. So this is a sort of information, effectively what you're looking down to on your notepad, which is then a printout of a report to know this is what you've got. Why would that not be embedded into the application? I think they're the sorts, that's where we will go. It's almost like not reading your mind, it's anticipating what you want in order to complete this task. And that's where I see the tools doing it. That's the sort of, if I could imagine what it was like, would be that little paperclip on the side helping you do what you needed to do. Yeah. But it knows from your behavior, from your use. That's where I sort of see that we're going. The challenge of doing that in the major platforms, and obviously they're the ones who have got the money to invest in this, I feel like it's going to lock you into the major ERPs again. And we all know that putting an agent on top of a system that you still need to go through 3 screens for is not going to be the right solution, right? So how do you almost bring the data up into a layer above it, have support for it, but at the end of the day, when you're pushing the data back down into the systems, that's the integration part. But yeah, I can see something coming, and I don't think it's too far away actually, about that. And I had an interesting guy reach out to me about a startup the other day, getting some thoughts and some advice around service desk. And he said, well, we're looking at creating a technology that does a level 0 service desk. Effectively, you ask an AI agent a question about a problem that you're having, or it can already identify a problem that you're having in your machine. It knows that there is an outage somewhere in North America or Southeast Asia, and it's telling you, you're in that zone. This is the reason. This is the most likely reason that you're having this problem. Are you aware of that? If you ask it a question, it will go to all of your operational process documents and say, okay, the reason why this isn't working is because you're doing this. You should be doing that. Um, if the major ERPs aren't doing it in their own system, someone else is going to do it for them. And I think this level zero type service desk it will eliminate the need for a bigger service desk, but it will never eliminate the service desk. It's still going to have levels of support that you're always going to need, but I think that's going to change dramatically.
Great insights there, Mark. And I think within this innovation chaos, like I said, the world needs a lot of more leaders like you who kind of understand the craziness that is within that innovation chaos. At the same time is very well grounded in terms of how these systems have worked over the years, and then have that leadership where you can empower your team with the right tool set and the right mindset to actually play that game within that playground, as opposed to getting stuck within that situation. Because if you think about that, this chaos and this change, the pace of change that's coming, you cannot avoid that by just standing still. Neither can you just pick anything and just start running, right? Either of those two are not going to be the way to really embrace it. You have to make strategic moves. You have to make those leadership calls, and you have to have a very good understanding of the architecture, and then mixing all that together in order to come up with a strategy that is fail fast at the same time keep moving forward. So great discussion, Mark, and as always is always insightful talking to you. Thanks a lot for being
Yep.
here on this podcast.
No worries. Thanks, Harley. Appreciate it.